decided to finally show up. My boy, Scopper Gaban is finally here, and he is not exactly what I expected. But now that the left hand of the former Pirate King has been finally revealed, what is his actual plan for Luffy and the Straw Hats? And I'm kind of dying to know what you think, because I personally believe that he could be the key to unlocking Luffy's true powers that will help him defeat Emu and the Gorosei at the end of the story. But you know, what's maybe even more insane here though, is that we might have finally gotten the clue that we needed to say that Scopper is the man marked by flames and has been the one hiding the final road poneglyph all along after all. But guys, let's start it off with an appreciation applause for Oda here, because I mean, he's giving us back-to-back absolute banger chapters here. I honestly kind of feel like if we didn't just get the lore drop of the century in the last chapter, then even more people would be going absolutely crazy about the reveal of Scopper freaking Gaban. And I mean, fans of the channel will know that this isn't just any character for me. This is my man, Scopper Gaban, my favorite unofficial character who we've never seen outside of any of the flashbacks so far, but he is the third in command of the Raja Pirates. In other words, the man who was always hanging around on the same level as Roger and Rayleigh, and I've been literally waiting 500 chapters at this point to finally meet this man, and he is finally here. And let me tell you, we're gonna dive into everything that Scopper's arrival might mean for Luffy and the crew. Trust me, we're gonna get there, but first, I do want to know if you're all seeing the same comparisons here that I am with him, because obviously now it's more clear than ever that Roger, Rayleigh, and Scopper Gaban are just insanely closely paralleled with Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. I mean, we've seen the Luffy and Roger comparisons basically all throughout the story at this point. I don't think I even need to describe those to you. And then, of course, Zoro and Rayleigh are both the main swordsmen, first mates, and they both like to drink a lot, and they do like to sleep. But what's even crazier is that now with Scopper's introduction, we now also know that both third in commands are basically just love-struck fools. Though I will say, I mean, Rayleigh also kind of is that a little bit too. Which I will say is really wild. I never really expected Scopper Gaban would go around introducing himself as the missionary of love. Like what? But it just kind of seems to me like he's an older version of Sanji, who shockingly might be even less mature somehow. So I don't know, who knows? Maybe Sanji will beg Scopper Gaban to train him to woo all the ladies of all the races around the world, because clearly Scopper knows what he's doing in that department, if you know what I mean. Now, what's absolutely wild, I think, is that somehow almost all of the important Raja pirates eventually have had a serious relationship with some women. If you want, they're kind of basically, to me, the most romantic characters and the most romantic crew in the entire story, because Roger had a baby with Portgas de Rouge, Rayleigh and Shaki are an item, and then Shanks and Makino are pretty much basically confirmed to have their own child as well. But now we've confirmed that Scopper and Ripley are a match as well. So man, I don't know. I mean, I kind of wonder what they've all actually learned on Laugh Tale that made them all want to go out and get hitched. I mean, is the One Piece just a big collection of romance novels or something like that? I guess Buggy is the one who didn't get the message here, but then again, he didn't go. So I think that fits that theory perfectly. Jokes aside though, now that Scopper is finally here, we can officially start speculating on his true purpose here in Elbaf and for the rest of the story. And clearly, it's going to involve the Straw Hats one way or another, mainly Luffy, of course. I mean, remember, a couple of chapters ago, we even saw him basically waiting for them to finally arrive on the shore here back in chapter 1124, I think it was. So he must have had plans for Luffy to begin with, which goes along with our idea that all of the Raja pirates have been waiting at key locations along the Grand Line to prepare the one person who will find the One Piece and become the next Joy Boy. However, very much unlike Rayleigh, Scopper isn't gonna just walk up and become friends with the crew right here, clearly. He literally threw an axe at them, and now he's challenging Luffy to an all-out contest to take the key to Loki's chains. Now, that being said, let me be very clear here. I don't think anyone seriously thinks that Scopper is going to be a real enemy to the crew. I mean, if you do, let me know your reasoning, but it seems very obvious that Scopper Gaban just wants to basically test Luffy here, and that seems to be exactly what we're basically getting. Scopper is going to test Luffy's physical capabilities by playing cat and mouse with the key, which is, you know, this very typical classy shonen mentor type of trope, which is just look at Kakashi and Naruto, for instance. But what you might have missed in the chapter is that Scopper actually already gave Luffy a test of his true intentions a little bit earlier in the chapter. Because when you look at it right here, you can see that Scopper asks Luffy, well, when the worst thing happens with Loki, what would you actually do? And keep in mind that this is is before Scopper decided to show Luffy's group where the key actually is. So I'm just gonna speculate here that if Scopper didn't actually like Luffy's answer in this scene to this question, he probably wouldn't even have shown them the secret treasure room to begin with, because why would he? And maybe even just blasted them straight out of the hole above the summoning circle right there as well. But let's back up a little bit more here for a moment, because I do have a really serious question for you. Do you think that Scopper wants to keep Loki chained up forever himself? Like, really? Is that really his goal, you think? Because if he really thinks that Loki is such a danger and will cause all kinds of terrible chaos and destruction when he's released, then why in the world would he even show Luffy this key? You know what I'm saying? Like, we already saw that they would never have found it to begin with, and we were told that giants who truly want to keep Loki locked up like Ja Rule would never tell anyone where it really is hidden. So then ask yourself, why did Scopper Gaban just very casually reveal the hidden location of this super important item? Well, it does kind of seem to be the obvious answer to me that Scopper actually does want Loki to be freed, but only by the right person under the right circumstances. And for me, that really makes me wonder, like, what plan Scopper has in store for Luffy and Loki together, but I think I might have potentially already figured out the reason. And it all kind of ties back into the Harley text and the mural that we got in the last chapter, because we can see here on the left side of the mural that it depicts a very climatic battle. Now don't worry, I'm not gonna dive too deep into all of this, we just did a really big breakdown video for this, but the interesting thing is that we have a regular giant who's on Nika's side, but then there's also this second larger giant with horns that I will say could look like an ancient giant, but also look a lot like Loki's. So to me, this could mean that in Luffy's eventual battle with Emu, he will not only have the giants as allies, but also some ancient giants or people with ancient giant blood who we now know are usually larger and have horns. Like Loki, for example, who we do know has ancient giant blood from his father's side. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that I think that Scopper knows this very prophecy and wants Loki to take part in the final war, but he also needs someone who can inspire and lead Loki into the right direction. And I mean, you can probably guess what I'm gonna say next here, but obviously that person is gonna be no one else but Luffy. But at the same time, then Luffy probably isn't quite ready for that fight at his current power level, since he wasn't able to defeat the Gorosei on Egghead Island as well. Which now leads me to what I think is Scopper's real purpose for this arc. What I hope, at least, because basically I believe that, just like Rayleigh, Scopper might be the key to unlocking the next level of powers for Luffy. And you might be asking, why in the world is this even necessary? Isn't Luffy already one of the strongest characters in the story at this point? And the answer is kind of, well, yes, kind of, but not really. And as we saw in Egghead Island, even Luffy can't really do anything and any real damage against the demonic powers of the Gorosei, for instance. That to me clearly means that he'll need to unlock a new level of power to win the final war against the world government and even be able to compete with the likes of Shamrock, the Gorosei, Shanks, and so on and so forth. Which to me means that just like Rayleigh helped Luffy train during the time skip, I think that Scopper Gaban might play a very similar role here in Elbaf before the true conflict of the final saga really can kick off. Now don't worry, I will get into a lot of detail about how I think that training could and will look possibly, but before that, I do think it's pretty important to discuss the timing of this as well. Because keep in mind here that Shamrock and Gunko are already in Elbaf, and they aren't exactly messing around right now. Like, we do know that they're on this mission to take control of the entire island of Elbaf and basically force the giants to serve the government. So it's not like Scopper and Luffy can just go on a long training arc right away right now. So I think it might be much more likely that this training might occur after the main conflict on Elbaf has actually been resolved. And if you think about it, this is basically exactly what happened with Rayleigh as well. Because Luffy, of course, didn't start his real training until the war at Marineford was already finished, where he wasn't strong enough to protect his brother Ace. And what's kind of crazy to think about, curious what you think, is that we could be getting pretty much a very similar setup for this training in Elbaf as well, because we do know that Luffy mostly gets stronger by fighting and then failing and then in the process learning something new. So I think it's very possible that Luffy is just straight up not strong enough yet to defeat someone like Shamrock or Gunko and whoever else they're calling right now to Elbaf. And if he does fail to defeat someone like the Holy Knights, then it could be the perfect motivation for him to get stronger by training together with Scopper Gaban. So But that's kind of what I personally think, and this training will most likely happen after some tragic failure here on Elbaf, but I'm also very curious what you all think about the time of the training as well, because let's just assume that this training is gonna happen at some point, and Scopper will be teaching the Straw Hats, or even just Luffy, something really important. Then the main question here, of course, is what will that training actually include? Is it gonna be Haki, devil fruit powers, like something completely different potentially? But to tackle this question, let's start at something a little bit more simple, because while I don't really believe that this is the case, it is completely possible that Scopper only tells the Straw Hats some sort of new information, and that's then pretty much it. For example, let's say he could just give them the location of the final road poneglyph, or maybe he just tells them the secret to the Gorosei's demonic powers, you know, like teaching them what that actually is all about. You know, I'm kind of thinking that we could get something like another God Valley flashback, or some other flashback even, possibly involving Roger and his crew, which, you know, always really nice and welcome to get. Oh yeah, and actually, now that I mention it, one thing I wanted to talk about, quick side note, where in the world are all the other Roger pirates? Like, in case you don't know, there are like 20 other named Roger pirates that we know who literally there is no information if they're alive. Like, are they all dead, or are they just chilling in the world somewhere with the knowledge of the true history and no one really cares about it? Like, what's up with that? Are we gonna meet them all? Are they just never gonna be relevant? Kind of weird when you think about it. But anyways, back to Scopper Gaban here. As much as I would like to see a longer training arc, some short conversation might be pretty much all that we have time for in this arc potentially as well. And if you don't believe me, just listen to why it's a real possibility that Scopper does potentially not even survive the Elbaf conflict to begin with. I mean, just picture for a minute what we already know about Shamrock's plan. We do know that right now he is targeting the giant children of Elbaf, and it just seems to be really clear to me that Scopper's son Colin will most likely get kidnapped. Can we agree on that? I mean, that seems like such a too good to not happen storyline here. And given what we've seen from Colin so far, he'll probably try to fight Shamrock or Gunko all on his own, even though he has absolutely no chance of winning this. And so to me, if Scopper's son would be in danger, it might lead to a Shamrock versus Scopper Gaban confrontation that I mean, this is just my gut feeling without knowing anything about Scopper's power level right now. I don't really see him winning at this point, because I mean, we did see Rayleigh admit that he can barely keep up with an admiral and that he couldn't win against a Yonko like Blackbeard, at least at his current age. He probably could, like both of them when they were younger. But then if we assume that the top Holy Knights, like Shamrock, who's their leader, are the same or even more powerful than an admiral or the Yonko, then there is a really good chance that Scopper would probably lose that fight. Pretty badly, actually, when we consider that level of power scaling here. So yeah, if Scopper dies here, then there's obviously no time whatsoever for a major training arc with him, because he's dead, and whatever information he tells the Straw Hats before that would be pretty much all that we could get. But with that being said, we all do know Oda, and that he just almost never kills off important characters, so Scopper, I think, don't worry, I kind of have a good feeling that probably you're just fine no matter what. I mean, just look at Saul here, I guess. He was fine. So while this is a possibility, and maybe this is just my personal opinion because I really love training arcs and want to see this happen, but I really do have a good feeling that we might be getting a real training session with Luffy, because clearly, let's be real, there is a lot potentially for Luffy to learn. And so you might just think that this is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, we've all seen training arcs in anime before, a lot. Scopper teaches Luffy some like powerful stuff, Luffy gets stronger, instant power boost, and then we move on to the next island. Pretty simple, straightforward, right? Wrong! Because I actually suspect that Luffy's training partner wouldn't actually be Scopper, but the cursed Prince Loki himself. That's right. I said it, Loki. And you might be thinking that I'm crazy right now, but hear me out. Hear me out. I'm saying this every chapter. Hear me out. If there is one thing that Scopper can teach Luffy, it will be how to unlock the Haki that can actually damage the Gorosei that we saw in that Haki nod from Joy Boy. Because this is, of course, the secret that he needs to learn to win the final battle, and we do know that because it was clearly shown to us that Haki on Joy Boy's level can actually hurt the Gorosei physically, and even Imu miles and miles away. So, in my mind, this seems to be like the most obvious and main focus here. And now keeping that in mind, Scopper even made a very specific point about sensing a weird or abnormal haki in this chapter, so to me that already could be a subtle clue here about what his training for Luffy could actually focus on. But then if you remember back to every single time that Luffy has learned haki, there isn't actually much real instruction. I mean, sure, Rayleigh taught Luffy the basics, and he also learned a little bit from Hyogoro about during the Wano prison arc, but mostly it's usually all about Luffy feeling a new power more so than learning it, and then testing it out for himself in a real battle. And so what I really believe could happen here is that Luffy will see or feel this special weird type of haki, and then he will spend some time actually practicing this new power on his own. And really, what better way to practice than by sparring with another character who has been hyped up as an absolute unstoppable monster, and that we've been speculating that he might have been framed and actually might turn out to be an ally. And so to bring all of this together now, I do believe that Scopper has some sort of special plan, not just for Luffy, but for Loki too. Like, there must be a reason that he's showing the key to Luffy, and if we remember the ancient giant in the mural again, then there is a really strong possibility that Luffy will need Loki as a powerful ally for the entire final war, maybe even as a Straw Hat. I'm not sure if you're with me on this one, but I kind of feel like all of this is pointing towards the idea of Luffy and Loki training together after the conflict in Elbaf is over, and then traveling together, hopefully. Okay, let's just leave that here. You might then be wondering, what would that even mean for Scopper Gaban then? Is he just really gonna sit around and watch? No, right? I mean, I kind of think that there is yet another role that he can play here as well, and that is to teach the rest of the Straw Hats some new powers as well. Because, I mean, let's be real, clearly Zoro and Sanji do need to upgrade their abilities to keep up with Luffy as well, but even more importantly, guys, the rest of the Straw Hats do need some serious help at this point catching up with the absolutely insane monster trio. The gap is just way too big. Because right now, none of them stand any chance against any of the real strong opponents that they're really likely to start facing now. Like, come on, think about it. Do you seriously think that Nami here would last a single minute against Gunko? I mean, even Frankie would very likely get absolutely low diffed by the Holy Knight's arrow powers as well. So really, unless they're just not gonna fight anyone really powerful anymore going forward in the story, then I really feel like they might be needing their own long overdue power boost during this very arc as well. Fingers crossed. However, there's actually another thing that I haven't mentioned yet that could also play a major role in this possible training arc. And that is, of course, Luffy's Devil Fruit. Because with all the crazy lore about the ancient history and the role of the Sun God and all of this, there is a real possibility that someone here actually knows way more about the true powers of Luffy's Devil Fruit than Luffy even knows himself at this point. I mean, for all we know, it could even be Loki who is that person who we all assume has his own legendary Devil Fruit, or it could again be Scopper Gaban himself who learned the true history with Roger on Laugh Tale and teaches Luffy about those powers now himself. Honestly, either way, someone needs to teach Luffy that there are way more powers to his Devil Fruit than he ever realized, and what those exact powers are, we will have to wait and see, but I do certainly expect Luffy to learn some new Sun God powers in this arc, either by training with Scopper or Loki, or by fighting straight up against Shamrock and Gunko. I mean, remember, Luffy doesn't know that he has a hybrid form or a full zone transformation, all these things, right? Or I guess if Luffy wanted to shortcut it, he could unlock his new powers in the very real, very serious training method of checking out and signing up to support the channel over on my Patreon, and by doing so, even you can potentially unlock amazing Sun God powers and, more importantly, get access to a ton of really incredible artwork that we produce for this channel, like, all the stuff that you see right here. It's really cool and I want to keep doing that, and for example, we have this really cool colored version of the Elbaf mural, so many other cool perks like early chapter reviews, bonus content, and so on and so forth. So if you enjoy what we're doing here, you want to help us make better content and more art like this, go check out the Patreon and support us there. Really, really appreciate it for everyone who does that already. But speaking of comedy, can we just appreciate the humor in this chapter, please, also? Because even though it was fairly short, but we did get 4 chapters in a row, honestly, there were some absolutely hilarious lines between Luffy and Zoro, like literally walking away in the middle of Scopper's speech and warning, and even Nami calling Scopper a liar for leading them to a treasure room with, well, absolutely no treasure in it. Kind of love that Oda still focuses on the comedy even after all these years, and it's just one of these quintessential things that really make One Piece what it is, even with all the cool, darker and more serious undertones. Also, apparently Road is just now fully on board as an ally now suddenly. I'm still kind of having to get used to that. But one thing that the end of this chapter also gave us is the perfect view of a very interesting scar on the right side of Scopper's forehead. Which, I mean, man, look, I mean, I don't know if you all had the same reaction, but as soon as I saw this, my mind instantly went to man marked by flames here, because come on, it literally looks like a flame, right? So does that confirm that Scopper is the person holding the final road poneglyph? It's so hard to say. I kind of feel like Oda is really teasing us with this very mysterious character and, you know, throwing us little pieces here and there. Could be Salt, could be Scopper, but besides the scar, we now know a few other details that could actually support the idea that Scopper is the man marked by flames. But first of all, we kind of have to address the idea that the man marked by flames supposedly sails around on this black ship with whirlpools, so if Scopper has just been here on Elbaf, that should kind of rule him out by default, right? But since we actually do know that Scopper has been traveling in the recent past, such as when he went and visited Crocus, for example, in the cover story right here, then Scopper could very well potentially still fit that part of the rumors as well. On top of that, if there was any single location in Elbaf that would have held a poneglyph, a secret hidden treasure room under the throne could make a lot of sense, right? And so since Scopper knows about this very place, he could have possibly found it here and then had someone help him move it for him during his time in Elbaf as well. I gotta say, personally, I still really kind of like the idea that I brought up a couple of chapters ago, you know, that the road poneglyph might just straight up be hidden in the tree behind Loki, and the chained up giant is kind of blocking the entrance to a cave here. But I know I of course can't just, you know, throw that theory at you without giving you any evidence. I mean, come on, what do you think? Like, what kind of second-rate theorist do you think I am? Let's dive into what we know so far about the relationship between Scopper and Loki here. And let me know what you all think about this, but I for one really thought that there was a lot of subtle clues in this very chapter that Scopper and Loki have had some sort of history together. For one, he just goes on and on and on about the dangers if Loki is released and how strong he is and all of that, but then he still goes and shows Luffy the key to Loki's chain. So part of me kind of thinks that Scopper knows all of those things that people say about Loki being evil are not exactly true. Like, sure, he might be dangerous and powerful and cause mayhem, but I do think that Scopper knows that that isn't exactly the full story here. In fact, I could argue that Scopper and Loki could be working together even towards some hidden goal, such as protecting a poneglyph. When you really think about it, I could see Scopper even potentially being that Musa character that Loki was talking to a couple of chapters ago. But let's be real, you do know that I can't talk about Scopper without getting into a little bit of conspiracy mode here, because there are two really suspicious things about this entire situation. How in the world did Scopper even know about the hidden treasure room? Did he really just accidentally find it one day, or is there instead some deeper reason that he knows the secret location? And secondly, during Scopper's entire speech to Luffy, he never actually says if he tried to stop Loki before himself, because we do know he was around at that time already when Loki was rampaging, right? But all he says pretty much is that before Shanks, no one else could stop Loki, but does that include himself in there? I kind of feel like no. So if Loki really is so dangerous, why didn't Scopper himself try and lock him up? Like, he clearly already had his girlfriend and son around at the time of the Loki and Harald conflict, so wouldn't Scopper want to protect his own family from Loki, you know, rampaging through the country if everyone else was already fighting to stop him? To me, just like so many things with Loki, things don't really add up. Just like how it doesn't really make sense that Scopper didn't say anything whatsoever about that summoning circle here. Like, come on, he had to see that thing, right? It was literally right in front of him and he doesn't address it, and the fact that he didn't say anything about it to the Straw Hats kind of makes me wonder if he's seen something like this before and he knows very well what's going on. Maybe in a previous clash with the Gorosei or the Holy Knights, potentially all the way back on God Valley, for instance. Or if you wanted to go even crazier with this, what about the idea that Scopper might have actually been part of the entire conflict that left King Harald dead to begin with? Because there are a few clues that point towards that idea as well. First, Rhodes says that Ja Rule is one of the only people who know where the key is, and personally, I kind of already suspect that Ja Rule played some sort of suspicious role in that death as well. And so if Scopper also knows where the key is, then maybe he learned that information from Ja Rule, and if he and Ja Rule were working together in some way, does that make Scopper Gaban potentially a bad guy? I mean, just throwing it out there, but I could even see a possible possible world where Scopper could have had a hand in Harald's death, while his true goal was actually to get into the treasure room and find the last road poneglyph. Maybe he even regrets now what happened back then, which is why he would be fine freeing Loki at this point. But there's really too much going on here that we still need to figure out, and as usual, the truth behind the Harald and Loki fight seems at this point to be the key to a lot of the mysteries we already have here in Elbaf. There is yet another alliance that Scopper could have had though, and honestly it might just be the one that makes the most sense out of everything we've talked about so far, because clearly Scopper and Shanks know each other from their time on the Roger crew, so I could definitely see those two working together and being in cahoots as well. Maybe they wanted to trap Loki so that the Giant Prince and Luffy could actually meet in the future. Maybe that's like a important condition for Luffy to becoming Pirate King, and that would actually make a lot of sense to me in my opinion. And before we move on here, I just want you to listen to this next point. Did you notice that Scopper's scar is on the right side of his face? Because in One Piece, a really interesting fact is that most face scars and other face markings are usually on the left face side. If you want some examples, look at Luffy, Shanks, Garp, Zoro, Sabo. They all have their scars on the left side. And honestly, I could just keep going with just scars, but then there's also things like Dragon's tattoo, and even King Harald has a tattoo over his left eye, as does Kaido's right-hand man King as well. So to me, it's kind of very interesting that Scopper's is on the right side. And what's even crazier is that Scopper's old buddy Rayleigh also has a scar on the right side of his face. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail here why the left side, the left eye thing matters. It's basically part of this whole big theory I had a couple of years ago, you know, that the left eye, the left side of Jaya is actually where Laugh Tail was and it got missing and everything like that. There's a lot of reasons why this is very intentional throughout the story. So all you need to know is that this is something Oda does very intentionally, and so I do wonder what it could mean, because why in the world are the Raja pirates the one with the only exception to this rule? Is it because of something that they learned at Laugh Tail? Because Scopper, of course, didn't have that scar before the final voyage with Roger, so I do kind of have the feeling like this must mean something. But if you have any ideas, please let me know below. I'd be like very curious if you have any ways to explain this. So with that little side tour out of the way, I now want to circle things back to yet another really shocking point in the chapter, which is when Luffy and the gang entered the throne room, they immediately saw the giant summoning circle left by Shamrock and Gunko when they randomly appeared on the island a couple of chapters ago. And maybe it's just me, but did you also freak out when you saw the thing still being there? Because I mean, it's already been some time since the Holy Knights appeared, like hours I think. So why is this thing still there? As far as I can tell, the Gorosei circles didn't stay there in Ekid Island all the time, so why is this one still there? Well, I do think I could have an answer, and it could lead to another major battle way sooner than we might have been expecting. Because from the very start, I kind of noticed that there were some differences between this circle and the Goroseis from Ekid Islands. First one, this one you probably know, the Goroseis all had numbers inscribed in the circle, but the one here in Elbaf does of course not. Now, does that mean that this is a much more general summoning circle that does have to stay in the same spot that it first landed? Because if you remember back to when Gunko and Shamrock first arrived, it kind of looks like a lightning bolt struck the castle and made that summoning circle, but that also occurred on Ekid Island. So I'm not really sure why this one seems to be sticking around while the ones on Ekid Island apparently didn't. Whatever the answer here is, this could lead to major trouble for the Straw Hats, because we already know at this point that at least one more Holy Knight is on the way. And let me know if I'm crazy here, but if I had to guess, then I would say that this third Holy Knight is probably gonna show up in the exact same summoning circle, right? Would make sense. We already saw Gunko and Shamrock use the same circle, so why wouldn't the next person arriving use that circle as well? But if that's true, then of course we'd be getting into a major fight right away very soon, because Luffy and his group are just down the staircase, and I could very easily see them coming to investigate if yet another Holy Knight uses that circle as well and suddenly appears. Who knows, maybe Scopper might even be able to sense the person's arrival like he did for Shamrock and Gunko, and I for one would absolutely love a potential clash between Luffy and this Holy Knight, because it would give us a so much better understanding of how powerful they really are, and it could potentially even be a chance for Scopper to show off his true abilities, or even the secret hockey technique that could defeat characters with these demonic powers. Actually, Scopper fighting might be an even better way to power scale the Holy Knights, because we do know that he was very similar to Rayleigh in power, and we have seen Rayleigh clash with many strong characters at this point, so it would actually give us a pretty decent idea of Scopper's true powers as well. Also, a little side note here, this is actually the best view that we've ever had of the writing on around these summoning circles, which kind of made me wonder if it was similar to the writing on the poneglyphs, but if you look at all of them, kind of think you can see that this is like a different language, right? These are different marks. The poneglyphs writing is much more like characters within a square, while those on the summoning circles look very much more like actual freestanding characters. So it does seem like the summoning magic language is different and older, maybe, than the language used by the ancient kingdom, or at the very least the language used on the poneglyphs. But does that necessarily make it older or just different? I don't have the answer for you, but it could mean that the demonic powers that we've seen from the Gorosei and the Holy Knights are actually much different than anything that we've seen so far in the story. In fact, it could just be, and I'm just putting this out there because I think it would be so hype, it could be a straight up whole separate new power system. Can you imagine that? Like, how crazy would it be to get an entire brand new power system on top of Devil Fruits and Haki at this point, this close to the end of the story? I mean, when I say this close to the end of the story, how close are we really? Probably not that close, but you get the idea. We're in the final saga. And I mean, on the one hand, I could say it's a little bit hard to see Oda actually doing that, but then on the other hand, this is also the guy who changed Luffy's Devil Fruit only recently, so honestly, who knows? But a full-on demonic power system would also be very interesting because it could lead to others learning about these powers, or who knows, maybe even other characters already have some of these demonic powers outside of the government. I'm looking at you, Shanks, or maybe even Dragon, or maybe Zoro's Ashura abilities are actually related to this demonic power system and not directly to Haki. And who knows, just putting out there, but if this is a whole different power system, then maybe some of the characters that we know could potentially learn some demonic powers themselves. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking now about how silly it is to picture Luffy with Sun God and demon powers. So maybe more realistically, we could see someone like Brook being a really good fit for demonic abilities, that since he already has a devil fruit related to the dead. Or, I mean, I guess Robin's transformation, demonic transformation, is a little bit sus as well, because it doesn't seem super related to her devil fruit powers as well. Oh, or you know who else would be probably the perfect, now that I think about it, the perfect candidate for these powers? Someone who's already associated with darkness. Yeah, Blackbeard. Which, if he did get demon powers, then it would make the final clash between him and Luffy just the more epic. A man with multiple devil fruits and demon abilities against the true sun god. Man, what an absolutely epic fight that would be. It would truly make him the greatest villain in all of One Piece, which I have the expectation for. And if you actually want to see why Blackbeard out of all characters is the closest to beating Luffy to the One Piece and becoming Pirate King, then you can watch that video right here next to me. But as always, thanks so much for watching. What a fun series of chapters. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, a special thank you to all the Patreon members that you can see right here. You are all insanely awesome and really help the channel out a lot. Thanks so much, and I will see you in 2 days with more demon stuff. Working on that.